All right, let's stay on the election front. And the Democratic Alliance leader, Mmusi Maimane, says the future of South Africa lies with coalition politics. His party is in charge of the Johannesburg and Tshwane metros with the help of the EFF, of course. Now, it lost the Nelson Mandela Bay Metro after the EFF pulled their support in Port Elizabeth, revealing the fragile nature of coalition governments. Today, the UDM's newly appointed mayor of Nelson Mandela Bay, Mngambi, faces a motion of no confidence brought by the Patriotic Alliance. The question we're asking this morning is, how effective are coalitions when it comes to service delivery? Are they stable? Is another question. Well, Professor Mcebisi Ndletyana joins me in studio, but perhaps let's bring you this particular story before we link to that discussion with the Prof. Environmental Affairs Minister Nomvula Mokonyane's husband, Serge Mokonyane, has sadly passed away. He died in a Johannesburg hospital this morning. A statement says he was admitted last month, but it gives no further details. The family has asked for privacy to mourn and say they will soon communicate details of the memorial service and the funeral.
And then halfway, because it's your second round, let me tap the first ones.
All right, let's resume that particular discussion. Prof, thank you very much for making it this morning. So the question we're asking you here is, how effective are coalitions when it comes to service delivery? Because at the end of the day, people have got to get basic services delivered to them. If we look at the example of Nelson Mandela Bay.
Well, generally speaking, they're effective to the extent that the various parties can agree. If they are all of like mind, it's easier to agree. But if you have unlike parties, for instance, different ideologies, temperamental personalities, people who had never worked together in the past, so you have a recipe for an unstable coalition. Generally, they are very unstable because of those things. But if you work over time, you can agree, then it's fine. But historically and by definition, they are just unstable. That is why you would prefer to have a majority party that wins elections, because there you have a decisiveness, quick decision making. The party implements its own program. But coalition at a different level, they are inclusive. If you want everyone to be reflected in government, if you want parties to compromise, if you don't want hostile, divisive politics, it can work. But that's the ideal, to have less hostility in our politics. That's the ideal. But the present is that you have a lot of real politic, which then leads to instability, poor service delivery, in the same way that we've had in Nelson Mandela Bay for the last 3 or 2 or so years.
Perhaps let's zoom into Nelson Mandela Bay. That's the area that enjoys your vested interest. Talk to us about what really is going on there. The mayor today faces a motion of no confidence from the Patriotic Alliance. At the same time, yesterday, his office was raided and his home, the computer belonging to his wife, taken by the Hawks. What is going on with Mngambi?
Well, the mayor has been followed by allegations of corruption. One, that he got about 1 million rand from people who were involved in corruption. They call it IPTS, Public Transportation System, in PE. He got about 1 million rand from there. And he was investigated. That investigation is currently going on. And there's also a program that involved litter pickers. For instance, when he was MMC of Public Health, people who were employed illegally, and these tended to be UDM people, and lots of money was spent, and not all of that money went to the litter pickers. So you have those two major. There might be others. So he has been followed by allegations of corruption. Interestingly, by the way, when the IPTS allegation came up, the UDM leader, Bantu Olomisa, said they would go through his bank statements to determine whether or not he had received any money. And guess what? Bobani never delivered those bank statements to the UDM. Instead, whilst the party was waiting for the delivery of these bank statements, his lawyer, Danny House, issued a statement saying, I've gone through Bobane's bank statements and there's nothing untoward. Obviously, your own lawyer cannot say anything bad about you because he is bound by client confidentiality.
But presumably, the person South Africans should be looking to then to provide leadership in as far as this is concerned is Bantu Olomisa.
It is Bantu.
What's he saying?
I mean, you and I have been having this conversation for the last year or so, and Bantu Olomisa has been quite wishy-washy on this, because Bobane, he might not be demonstrably corrupt, but there are certainly questions that need answering. And we read today, actually, that there's trace of money is being deposited into his account. So there's some truth in this thing. Obviously, he hasn't been taken to court yet. So that is why now you have this. But the interesting thing about this motion is that it is the third motion. And the only party that can settle this is the EFF, because the EFF has 6 councillors, right? The DA can't quite do it. The DA coalition is now down to about 57, 58, because 2 of their councillors have jumped ship. They won't have elections anytime soon, and I think they'll have elections after May. So that coalition doesn't have the numbers. The only party that can sway this is the EFF or the ANC. Then the question becomes, both these parties have been going around saying they're against corruption. The ANC is going around saying Tumamena, to herald a new dawn. We are against corruption. We are going to clean everything else that has been bad in the last years or so. And yet they are there. The ANC constitute about 50 of those councillors. So they are propping this mayor. So if they indeed are clean, including the EFF, why are they propping a corrupt mayor?
Well, they're having difficulty trying to convince their own person there, Andile Lungisa, to recuse himself from that government. He's refused. Prof, let's look at it from a broader perspective now.
Yeah.
Is there a real possibility that we might have a coalition government at a national level? You see the problems facing the ANC in the lead-up to this election. The party, many have said, it's never been this divided before, particularly ahead of an election. You also have the EFF, which has somewhat had taints of alleged corruption, VBS. But at the same time, you can't ignore the kind of support that the EFF seems to enjoy from young people. Are they going to, or is there a chance that they could possibly be kingmakers, but at a national level?
If we take last 2016's results as anything to go by, the ANC stands at 54%. Current predictions put the ANC at about 60, between 55 and 60.
But Kgalema Motlanthe would like to think differently.
Kgalema knows the ANC quite well, and perhaps some of us are a little bit more optimistic. He might be realistic. I don't know, but the point is between 55 and 60. Their main asset is Cyril Ramaphosa. He's a public leader. He's not your typical organizational leader, so he appeals beyond the party. He has a lot of credibility. He's likable. He's not tainted by the mess that we've had, these 10 lost years that we've had. But at the same time, what you are seeing now with the list is inconsistent with what Cyril is promising. You can't promise ethical government, a clean government.
And still have.
And yet send thieves. Most of them are quite tainted, right? 10 or even 15 of them. There are some that are less known in that list. So, and here's an interesting question. If you have figures like Batabile, Mukonyane, this and that, making it into the list, whose impropriety is well known, how sure are you that they don't have similar figures who are less known in that list? Because it means that the affection is quite strong. And apparently the allegation that ACE rigged this list is not true, right? These are people that were nominated by ANC branches, and they say the process was quite thorough and long. They sat there, they debated, they read through the eye of the needle, right? The eye of the needle talks about revolutionary morality, that you must exemplify the best of the ANC.
Yet you still have Mmusi Maimane in there.
ANC branches said, these are comrades that we can entrust with the responsibility of heralding a new dawn. They took the list to Luthuli House, where they have a vetting committee. This vetting committee is probably, you would guess that there would be credible people there because they are vetting, you know. It's a vetting process to make sure that you have trusted cadres of the movement, as they say. And yet they still approve this. So that tells you something, that the organization, especially the party, has not caught on with the message of the New Dawn. So Cyril Ramaphosa is dealing with two institutions here, the state and the party. He's doing well in the state because he has presidential prerogatives. He can appoint there, but the party is quite problematic. And that tells you about the intensity of that resistance, orchestrated from the SG's office by Isma Khashula and Jesse Duarte. That tells you about how formidable that resistance is if it can produce a list that is patently in conflict with what the party stands for. You have to worry.
The ultimate question, Prof, and we end this conversation, that intensity that you speak of inside the party right now, cast your mind after May 8, the composition of cabinet. Does he avoid these very people that are problematic now that are going to be difficult to sell to the electorate?
The intensity morphs into fireworks there. Because assuming that these individuals remain in the list, one, he can't appoint them because he needs clean people. And secondly, the cabinet is going to be reduced in size. So he's going to have a lot of unhappy people in parliament. What are they going to do? And some of his allies at Luthuli House are now leaving Luthuli House. See, Cyril's future lies at Luthuli House, Xoli. ANC branches, corrupt as they are, hold the power. Those are the power base of the ANC. So if he takes some of his supporters from Luthuli House to Parliament, and he creates a lot of unhappiness in Parliament for his enemies, what is likely to happen is that all his enemies are going to congregate at Luthuli House around Ace Magashule and continue the fight that Ace has been on since Nasrec. So you are going to have a very explosive situation after the elections. This thing is not done.
We look forward to the National General Council. That's the midterm conference of the party. Professor Mcebisi Ndletyana will have this conversation, I suspect, a lot more, particularly ahead of the elections and, of course, that all-important midterm conference of the ANC.